Hello. My name's Thomas Ridge, and I came to that Navy graduation just to see my grandson earn his trident. I was told to move. Told I didn't belong. A junior officer called me Pops. Shoved my shoulder like I was some confused old man who wandered in off the street. He didn't even look at the invitation in my hand. I drove 12 hours, wore the only suit I had left that still fit, and I was humiliated in front of my own blood. But the second my sleeve rolled up, and he saw the tattoo. That's when everything stopped. They called me a ghost. But I was very real that day. What do you think happened next? Ellipsis. I left the porch light on. Though I knew I'd be gone well past dark. Habit, I guess. Same way I still check the locks twice. Fold my socks military style. And brew my coffee stronger than most folks can handle. I slid the old invitation into my shirt pocket, creased at the corner. Ink slightly faded. Jack had written it out by hand. No email. No RSVP link. Just a single sentence. Seat A1. Front row. I want you there, Grandpa. That's all it took. 12 hours behind the wheel. Me, my truck, and the California sun crawling its way west. I didn't play music. Didn't need the company. The sound of tires on asphalt was enough. Like a drumroll that never ends. When I reached the base gate, a young MP stepped out of the booth. Couldn't have been more than 22. Flat top haircut, fresh pressed blues, voice sharp enough to slice bacon. Good afternoon, sir. ID and purpose? I handed him the invite. He looked it over real quick. Didn't ask my name, just nodded politely. Graduation ceremony. You're early. VIP parking's down the main road. Hang a left at the flagpole. I thanked him and drove on. No fuss. Parking lot was half empty. Rows of folding chairs were being set up near the review stand. Flags hanging still in the breeze. Speakers being tested. Pop music playing low through cheap portable amps. I opened the passenger side door. Reached for my coat. It was the same gray suit I wore to my wife's funeral. Still fit okay. Maybe a little snug at the chest. I ran my fingers across the fabric. Tugged once at the sleeves. They rode a little high now. But I wasn't here for appearances. I walked toward the seating area with the invitation in hand. It felt light, too light for the weight it carried. There was a sign out front. Reserved, VIP, command staff only. I stepped past it without slowing down. Rows were labeled A through E. I found my spot, A1. Dead center, front row. A couple officers were chatting nearby. One of them, a tall guy with aviators still on, clocked me as I approached. Sir, you need something? He asked. Voice clipped. No welcome in it. I held up the invitation. My grandson sent me this. Said this is my seat. He didn't take it, just glanced at the paper and shook his head. Sir, with respect, these seats are for command guests and high clearance personnel. Families are over in Section C up on the risers. I looked around. Section C was in direct sunlight. No cover. No sound system, just rows of white plastic chairs baking under the sky. This is where Jack told me to be, I said calmly. The officer stepped closer. Sir, I don't want to be difficult here, but we can't just have folks sitting wherever they feel like it. You'll need to move. He was young, too young to remember that not every war fits in a textbook. That not all heroes wear ribbons. Some just show up quietly. I served, I said. He nodded. But not like he cared. We appreciate that, truly, but we've got protocol to follow. Please don't make this complicated. He waved over two enlisted men standing nearby. Escort this gentleman to Section C, please. They approached, one maybe 30. The other barely out of boot camp. I didn't move, didn't argue, just stood there, like a tree someone forgot to cut down. One of them reached for my shoulder. It wasn't rough, just firm. That's when it happened. A gust of wind came off the water. Strong and sudden. It caught my sleeve, lifted it slightly, just enough to expose a faded mark, dark ink, stretched thin over wrinkled skin. A serpent, a trident, a skull, Omega Reaper underneath. They didn't say anything, but both men paused. One blinked, the other took a small step back. The officer hadn't noticed yet. He was too busy pretending he had somewhere more important to be. Sir, I'm asking nicely. Don't make us go hands-on. I didn't respond. The invitation I was holding slipped from my fingers, landing flat on the pavement. The wind caught it again and carried it a few feet forward, flipping it once, then once more. "Sir," I said, "you're not allowed to sit here." His hand squeezed my shoulder harder, and I knew something was about to break. Ellipsis. His hand pressed harder into my shoulder, like he was trying to make a point. I stayed still, not because I couldn't push back, but because I wanted him to keep thinking he was in charge, just a little longer. The invite was still dancing across the asphalt in the breeze. Nobody bent to pick it up. They were too focused on me, or more accurately, on what I might do. I didn't do a damn thing. The younger enlisted guy, brown hair, freckles, maybe 21, glanced down and froze. He'd seen it, the tattoo. His lips parted like he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. The older one, mid-30s, stared at it longer. His posture changed, slight shift of the shoulders. He was trying to act casual. But you don't forget a mark like that. He knew what it was. The officer with the sunglasses, Lieutenant Mason, still hadn't noticed. He was too busy scanning the crowd, probably hoping someone important was watching him handle the situation. "Sir," he said again, voice sharp, "I don't want to escalate this." I gave him a long, quiet look. "You already did," I said. He blinked, thrown for a second. He didn't like that I wasn't intimidated, that I wasn't backing down. I'd seen that look before, in young men who'd read more doctrine than dirt, practiced more posture than presence. He waved toward the risers. "Families over there. Section C, you can still catch the ceremony." I didn't budge. He turned to the enlisted men. "Move him, now." That's when the older sailor stepped back. "Lieutenant," he said, low and uncertain, "maybe we should." "What?" Mason snapped. "You want to let just anyone stroll into command seating now? You want to explain that to the admiral?" The younger sailor shifted his weight nervously. He was looking at the tattoo now. Really looking. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. Behind us, someone's phone buzzed. Not mine. I don't carry one of those smart ones. I keep my life unplugged these days. Then a voice cut through the tension. Calm, female, clear. "Lieutenant Mason, stand down." We all turned. Lieutenant Claire Donovan, Logistics Division. I'd never seen her before, but she looked like someone who didn't say things unless she meant them. Hair pulled tight, sleeves pressed sharp, voice like a level bubble, perfectly centered. Mason frowned. "Ma'am, with all due respect." "I've seen the mark," she interrupted. Mason blinked. "What mark?" She pointed, and for the first time, he looked down at my forearm. His mouth opened slightly. "What is that?" he asked, trying to sound annoyed, but I could hear the edge of it, confusion mixed with unease. I didn't answer. Claire did. "It's real," she said. "It's not a biker tattoo. Not some bootcamp souvenir. That's Reaper Omega." Both enlisted men straightened. Mason laughed, short and nervous. "That unit's a myth. Ghost stories passed around during Hell Week." She didn't smile. "My dad died in Laos. His last deployment was under that insignia. And there's only one man alive who still carries it." Mason went quiet. Claire turned to me. "Sir, would you like to sit?" I nodded once. She bent down, picked up my invitation off the ground, dusted it off, and handed it back. "I'll escort Mr. Ridge to his seat," she said, directing it at Mason. He didn't argue, couldn't. The tension that had built in his shoulders started to melt into something else. Not fear, yet, but it was coming. I walked past him without a glance. Claire led the way, respectful, professional. We didn't say much, didn't need to. When we reached the front row, I sat down in A1, the seat my grandson had saved for me. From the corner of my eye, I caught Jack. He was standing at attention with the other candidates. But for just a second, he looked over. Our eyes met. He looked confused, concerned. But then, just for a moment, he looked proud. Somewhere behind me, I could feel Mason's gaze still burning a hole in my back. That was the last moment he'd ever feel taller than me. Ellipsis. I stayed seated, back straight, hands resting on my knees, eyes forward. But I wasn't really watching the stage. I was listening. To the boots shuffling behind me. To the rustle of programs and whispers moving up and down the rows. To the silence that settled around my seat like fog that no one wanted to step into. Sometimes the loudest thing in the room is the thing no one says out loud. That tattoo hadn't just stirred the enlisted men. It cracked something deeper, something old. A few rows behind me, I heard someone mutter, "Jesus, that's real?" Another voice, quieter, said, "That symbol wasn't supposed to exist." They were right. It wasn't. Reaper Omega wasn't a unit you could Google. Wasn't in any official Navy registry. Hell, even the paperwork was handwritten and kept in a locked box inside a vault. We were made to be forgotten. That was the point. And for the most part, we were. Until today. I could feel it spreading now. Like a quiet fire. Whispers jumping rows. Looks being exchanged. A ripple of recognition too late to contain. That's when she showed up again, Lieutenant Claire Donovan. She came back, not marching, just moving like someone who knew exactly where she needed to be. She didn't sit. She stood just behind me, off to the left, holding a clipboard, but not looking at it. Her eyes were locked on the officers still hovering near the entry point, where Mason was clearly trying to figure out how bad he'd messed up. Claire leaned in just a little, kept her voice low. "My father's name was Captain Paul Donovan," she said. 1972. Laos. Last confirmed position was just outside Paxi. Operation name was scratched out in the report, but the post-mission comms listed a radio tag, Omega 2. That was him, wasn't it? I didn't answer right away. I looked straight ahead. The stage crew was adjusting the microphones. A few family members were arriving, none of them looking our way. That was fine by me. I finally nodded once. He was good, brave, smarter than most of us. Claire closed her eyes for half a second. Just enough. They told my mom it was a transport crash. Training mission. Nothing classified. I didn't say anything. That kind of lie. It's not meant to be told forever. Just long enough to let people move on. Or forget. But some people don't forget. Claire's phone buzzed. She glanced down, then back up. "I forwarded a photo of your tattoo to a contact at Naval Records." It triggered a security protocol. 10 minutes later, I got a response from a system I don't even have clearance for. The message was one line. She showed me her screen. "Do not interfere. Hold position. Do not engage." I looked at her. She looked back. "That mean what I think it means?" she asked. I gave a small shrug. "It means someone important still remembers. And they're on their way." She nodded slowly, then straightened up and walked off without another word. I sat there a while longer, feeling the ocean wind press against my back. Somewhere in the distance, the speakers popped with static. The ceremony was about to begin. Then I noticed movement to my right, Jack. Still in formation, still in uniform, but his eyes were scanning the front row now. Darting through the faces. Then they locked on mine. He looked confused, then surprised. Then, something else, like maybe a piece of a puzzle he never knew was missing had just clicked into place. I gave him a nod. Nothing big, just enough. His shoulders rose slightly, like he wanted to step out of line. But he didn't. He stayed planted, just like they'd trained him. Good. One of the Master Chiefs approached the podium. Microphone squeaked to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for joining us today for the graduation of Class 428 of Basic Underwater Demolition, SEAL training." The ceremony had begun. But I wasn't here for the speeches. I was here because someone had spent the last 40 years pretending I didn't matter. And they were about to learn the truth. 10 miles out, on a highway leading to Coronado, a black SUV with no plates was weaving through traffic like the driver had full clearance and zero patience. Ellipsis. The black SUV came in fast. No sirens, no warning, just presence, like a moving wall that didn't ask permission. It rolled through the back gate of the base without slowing. The MP on duty barely had time to salute before the vehicle was gone. Tires whispering across the asphalt like a threat nobody wanted to hear out loud. Back at the ceremony, the sun had shifted. The shadow line from the flagpoles reached further now, casting half the VIP section in cool shade. I sat right on the edge of it. Half light, half dark, seemed fitting. I didn't look back when I heard the low engine idle behind the review stand. But I knew. They were here. On stage, the commanding officer was reading names. One by one, the graduating SEALs were called up, awarded their tridents, saluted, moved on. When Jack's name was called, Ridge, Jack Allen, the crowd clapped politely. He stepped forward, spine straight, expression neutral, but his eyes flicked to me again. Just for a second, and in that second, he saw something he hadn't before. I saw it land on his face, not a smile, not pride. Questions, big ones. He took the trident, saluted, then turned and rejoined the formation. That's when the temperature dropped. Not the air, just the room. Metaphorically, something shifted behind me. I could feel it ripple through the officers like a cold draft in a sealed room. A man stepped forward from the side of the platform. He wasn't introduced. No one called his name. But everyone started moving the way people move when someone with real power walks in. He wore plain navy dress blues. No medals showing, but the posture, the stride, the weight of his presence, it told the whole story. He wasn't just in charge. He was above charge. Vice Admiral Graham Sloan. I hadn't seen him in 20 years. Last time, we were both in a hangar bay. Quiet conversation behind 3 layers of clearance. He's changed. Silver hair now, jaw tighter, but the eyes, same steel. He didn't look at the crowd. Didn't wave, just walked right down the aisle, directly toward me. Every officer within 10 feet stood up instinctively. Mason, still standing by the perimeter, went pale. I didn't even have to look at him. I could feel the heat drain off him like steam off wet pavement. Sloan stopped 2 feet from me. "Mr. Ridge," he said quietly. I looked up, met his eyes, said nothing. He didn't salute, he wasn't supposed to. But he bowed his head slightly. And in that moment, the entire ceremony stopped breathing. The PA system crackled. The CO looked confused. People whispered. Sloan leaned closer. "We didn't know you were coming, sir." "Wasn't planning to," I said. "But you're here." I gave the faintest nod. Apparently that's a problem for some. He glanced toward Mason, who now looked like he wished the earth would open and swallow him whole. Sloan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I want every record of this ceremony scrubbed from Open Archive. Video, photos, everything. Classify the footage and reroute the backups to my direct access. Understood?" 2 aides snapped into motion. Sloan turned back to me. "May I sit?" I motioned to the empty chair next to mine. He sat without hesitation. Now we were both in the shadow. "We thought you were dead," Sloan said under his breath. "I was," I replied. "Then I got invited to a graduation." Ellipsis. Vice Admiral Sloan didn't speak right away. He just sat there next to me, elbows on his knees, fingers laced tight like a man praying for time to slow down. I could see it in his jaw. He was biting back the instinct to say too much too fast. That was the old training. The habit of silence. I respected that. "You know they'll want a statement," he finally said, voice low. "They'll want a lot of things," I replied. He nodded. "Especially the agency. They're probably already listening." "Then I won't waste my breath." We sat there for a beat. Just 2 men surrounded by a sea of pressed uniforms. Proud parents. And kids who still believed wars had rules. Sloan glanced over at Jack, my grandson, who was now standing at ease with the other graduates. His eyes flicking toward us again. "He looks like your son," Sloan said. "He's got his mother's fire. But yeah, he's a Ridge." "He doesn't know, does he?" I shook my head slowly. "Never told him. Never planned to." Sloan let out a soft breath through his nose. "He's about to find out anyway." I didn't respond, because there wasn't anything to say. Truth has gravity. It pulls things to the surface when it's ready, not when you are. The ceremony ended with a round of applause. The Navy band striking up a triumphant march. Families stood and cheered. Officers moved in to shake hands, take photos, clap backs. I stayed seated. A few minutes later, Jack broke formation and jogged over. His eyes were wide, voice uncertain. "Grandpa, what the hell just happened?" I stood slowly, bracing on my knees. "Graduation happened. You made it." He looked past me at Sloan, then back to me. Wait, are you two? Do you know each other?" Sloan stood too, extended a hand. Jack Ridge. Congratulations, son. You've done something very few ever do. Jack hesitated, then shook his hand. Thank you, sir. Sloan leaned in just enough. Take care of your grandfather. He's more important than you realize. Then he turned and walked away. Quiet and fast, with 2 aides trailing him like shadows. No farewell, no salute, just gone. Jack turned back to me. Grandpa, why is a vice admiral telling me that? What's going on? I gave him a long look. The kind that a man earns through decades of regret. Then I gestured toward the parking lot. Let's walk. We moved together, side by side, past the folding chairs and flags, past the lingering buzz of small talk and group photos. He waited until we were out of earshot. You were military? He asked. Yes. Why didn't you ever tell me? I glanced over. Because I wanted you to be proud of your own footsteps. Not walk in mine like they were yours. He didn't respond right away. Then, but you were in something big, weren't you? Everyone was looking at you like you were some kind of ghost. I stopped walking. I was. Jack blinked. Wait, what? I turned to face him. There are things I did that never made it into history books. That were never meant to. I buried them, for good reason. He crossed his arms. You could have just told me the truth. No, I said firmly. I couldn't, because once you know that kind of truth, it stains everything, and I didn't want that for you. Jack's jaw tightened. He looked out toward the ocean, where the sky was starting to turn orange. So what now? He asked. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out a photo, faded, folded a dozen times over. 4 men, desert fatigues, faces covered in dirt and sweat. One of them, me, was holding a broken radio. The others were laughing. One was Sloan. The other 2, gone now. This, I said, handing it to him, is what it was really about. Not the medals, not the missions, the men, the moments. That's all that stayed real. He studied the photo in silence. Then, in a voice that didn't sound like a new SEAL graduate, but like a grandson trying to figure out where his own story began, he asked, "What was your call sign?" I looked him square in the eyes. Ghost. His eyes widened, not with fear, but with something heavier, understanding. Ellipsis. Jack didn't say anything for a while. We stood in the parking lot, the sun sinking low behind the Coronado buildings, casting everything in gold and shadow. He still had that photo in his hand. I could see the edges trembling just a little. Not fear, just too many thoughts trying to surface at once. Ghost? He repeated, quietly. You were the ghost? I nodded once. He shook his head, like trying to clear the static. No way. That's a story. Something they tell us in Team Week to scare us straight. One guy, all black gear, used to drop into enemy camps, take out HVTs, vanish before backup even got boots on. You're telling me that was you? I didn't smile. There's nothing funny about the truth. You ever wonder why nobody's ever confirmed the ghost's identity? I said, because it was never meant to be remembered. Just felt. He looked at me like I'd just grown a second head. Grandpa, I looked up to you for being the man who taught me how to rebuild an engine blindfolded. Who taught me to gut a fish with one hand and make coffee that could kill a mule. You were quiet, kind, stubborn as hell, but you were never this. I looked out toward the ocean. I was never supposed to be. He walked a few steps away, rubbing the back of his neck. You watched me push myself through hell for the last year. Bud's dive school. Cold water. Sand pits. Instructors breaking us down. And the whole time, you knew exactly what I was going through? Yes. And you didn't say a word? No. Why? I turned toward him. Because I didn't want you chasing my shadow. I wanted you to become something on your own terms. Not trying to measure up to a ghost. He stared at me, breathing heavy. You could have told me. I deserved to know. Deserved? I said, voice tightening. I buried men who deserved medals they never got. I carried secrets that would break most men in half. And I did it so you wouldn't have to. That's the deal we made, as old ghosts. You don't get both the truth and the peace. He looked like he wanted to shout, punch something, but instead, he just sat down hard on the bumper of a nearby truck. For a long moment, The only sound was the low buzz of distant cars and the wind coming in off the Pacific. Then he said, "There was this drill instructor, Chief Marlin, he used to say. The ones who never talk about war are the ones who bled the most." We all thought it was just a line. I nodded. "It's not." He looked up at me again. This time with something new in his eyes, not awe. Not confusion. Respect. The real kind. Earned, not taught. "So what now?" he asked. I walked over. Sat next to him. "Now?" I said. "You carry the weight. Not of what I was. Of what you are. You earned that trident. That's yours. Not mine." He looked down at the pin on his chest. "It feels heavier now," he said. I chuckled once. It always does after the truth. He smiled. Just a little. Then, "You gonna disappear again after this?" "Maybe," I said, "but not before I buy you dinner." He laughed. Really laughed. First time I'd heard that sound from him in months. "You're still buying?" Boy, I carried a knife and a rifle through jungle for 6 weeks straight eating bugs and raw rice. "You think I'm letting you pick the restaurant?" From across the lot, Mason watched us. He was still there, still trying to make sense of what he'd seen. But some men live to command. Others exist so command remembers what real power looks like. Ellipsis. We were halfway through a plate of carne asada fries at a roadside shack near Imperial Beach when the text came through on Jack's phone. He looked down, eyebrows furrowed. "It's from Lieutenant Donovan," he said. He slid the phone toward me. The message was simple. "Mason's been pulled. HQ wants you both to report at 0700. It's not just about the incident anymore." I read it once, then again. The words didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was how fast it all moved. Jack leaned back in his seat, exhaling through his nose. Guess it wasn't just a slap on the wrist. I nodded. They never slap. They either ignore, or they erase. He looked at me. "Which one is this?" "We'll find out in the morning." We finished eating mostly in silence. Jack paid, this time without argument. That told me everything I needed to know about his headspace. He was adjusting to the shift, the weight of truth. The collision of who I was with who he's becoming. Next morning, we arrived at Naval Base Point Loma. Building 72, unmarked. 2 flags out front. Nothing fancy, but the kind of place where every camera was working and every hallway had no echoes. A junior officer led us in. Quiet, efficient, no small talk. We were brought to a small conference room. Inside sat Commander Evers, Lieutenant Claire Donovan, and, unexpectedly, Vice Admiral Sloan. In plain uniform again, no ribbons, just authority. Mason was already seated at the far end of the table. He looked like a man unraveling. Not visibly broken, but brittle in the way men get when everything they've built is suddenly in question. Sloan didn't waste time. "Lieutenant Commander Mason," he said, voice eyes smooth, "we've reviewed footage, audio logs, and multiple eyewitness reports regarding your conduct at the graduation ceremony." Mason opened his mouth to protest. But Sloan raised a finger. "This is not a conversation." He motioned to Donovan. She stood, slid a file across the table. It landed with a soft slap of paper meeting wood, but the weight behind it was hard. "You disregarded a verified invitation. You forcibly removed a decorated war veteran. You mocked a guest in front of families, officers, and enlisted personnel. And you laid hands on a man who has clearance levels 4 tiers above yours. Despite the fact he's been off the grid for decades." Mason shifted. "I didn't know." "That's exactly the problem," Sloan cut in. "You didn't ask. You assumed." There it was again. That word. Same as before. Jack tensed beside me, but I rested a hand on his arm. Sloan continued. "You've been removed from the SEAL instructor pipeline. Effective immediately. You'll report to the Navy Archives at the Washington Navy Yard. You'll spend the next 12 months reading unredacted files on classified operations dating back to 1960. And you'll write a report on every single man who bled for the uniform you disrespected." Mason looked stunned. What is that even?" "It's mercy," Sloan said. "You're being given something you didn't give, perspective. You can still earn your way back." The room went still. Sloan turned to us. To me. "Mr. Ridge, on behalf of this institution, I offer you a formal apology." I didn't say anything. I just nodded once. Then Jack spoke. Sir, permission to speak freely? Sloane raised an eyebrow, then gave a short nod. My grandfather never asked for recognition. He didn't come here to be honored. He came here to sit quietly and watch me do something he never told me he already lived through, twice over. The lesson isn't just about protocol. It's about perspective. You said it yourself. Some people wear rank. Others carry the weight. Know the difference? Sloane didn't smile, but there was something in his eyes. A shift. A calculation. You got more of him in you than you realize. He said, I suggest you lean into that. He stood. Meeting over. We exited into the California sun. The brightness almost blinding. Jack exhaled, shoulders finally lowering. That felt final, he said. No, I replied. It felt fair. Mason watched us leave from the second-story window. He didn't move. Because some demotions aren't from rank, they're from reality. Ellipsis. We didn't talk much the next few days. Jack spent most of his time running drills, organizing gear, checking his pack over and over. It was like he couldn't sit still, not from anxiety, but from momentum, like something had cracked open inside him and now the only way forward was through. I watched from a distance. Didn't hover, didn't lecture, just let the fire burn. On the third day, just before sunset, he knocked on the back porch screen where I was sipping my coffee. Same mug I've had for 30 years. He didn't say anything right away. Then, I think I get it now. I waited. It wasn't about hiding who you were, he said. It was about making sure I didn't skip the part where I had to figure out who I was first. I nodded slowly. He took a seat on the wooden bench beside me. The air smelled like pine and sea salt, the strange combination that only coastal bases like this have. I looked up the Reapers, he said. I raised an eyebrow. Only found scraps, he continued. Redacted reports, a few whispers on old forums. One guy called it, the war inside the war. I chuckled once. That's not wrong. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. So what now? I wear the trident. I carry the weight. Do I try to follow in your footsteps? I turned toward him. You don't follow ghosts, I said. You learn from them. Then you go make your own damn trail. He nodded. A slow, thoughtful nod. One that comes from a man starting to understand the shape of the road ahead. Even if he can't see the whole map yet. Donovan called, he said after a beat. Said they want me on a fast-track team. Deployment ready in 6 months. You ready? I don't know, he said, but I will be. He reached into his pocket, pulled out something small and wrapped in cloth. I had this made, he said, unwrapping it. It was a challenge coin. Not Navy issued, custom. On one side, a coiled serpent wrapped around a trident. On the other, a single word in etched black letters, substance. I took it in my hand, felt the weight. That's yours, he said. I'm not trying to copy what you built. I'm trying to honor it. I closed my fingers around the coin. I never needed a statue or ceremony. I said, but this matters. We sat there a while longer. The sun had dropped behind the horizon. Cricket started up. Somewhere nearby, a flag rope tapped its pole with the soft, metallic rhythm of memory. Then Jack stood. I ship out next month, he said. You gonna stick around? I stood too. I've got some things to finish, I said, but I'll be where you need me. Always. He nodded once, then pulled me in for a quick, firm hug, the kind real men give when the words don't quite cover what the heart's saying. As he walked back to the barracks, I looked down at the coin in my palm. Not for the symbol, not for the word, but for what it meant. He wasn't chasing the legend anymore. He was becoming one. Ellipsis. The day Jack shipped out, the base was buzzing, but quiet in the ways that matter. You learn to read those silences, the final checks, the clipped goodbyes, the loud banter that masks the weight of the unknown. Every team has its own rhythm, its own pre-deployment heartbeat. Jack moved different now. Not cocky, not hesitant. Grounded, like a man carrying something heavy, but not burdened by it, anchored by it. I watched him from the lot as he hoisted his ruck and slapped shoulders with his squad. No speech, no drama, just a nod and a step forward. That's how real warriors do it. Before he loaded into the transport, he turned once, looked straight at me across the asphalt, Raised a hand. No wave. Just held it there. I returned the gesture. 1 second longer than I needed to. Then he was gone. The hum of the engines faded. And the lot emptied out. I stood there until the last echo of boots disappeared behind steel doors. That night, I walked alone. Down the shoreline. Boots on wet sand. Breeze pushing the tide up in lazy waves. I passed the spot where I used to sit with Jack as a boy. Skipping stones and telling him stories I made up, about sharks who wanted to be dolphins. About boats that sailed without maps. All fiction, all cover. He used to ask me, "Grandpa, were you ever in the Navy?" And I'd say, "A long time ago, when the water was colder." That was my way of telling the truth without waking the ghosts. I kept walking until I reached the jetty, the one where the water hits hardest when the wind shifts. There, I reached into my jacket and pulled out one last thing. The original Reaper insignia, the real one, sewn into a patch no bigger than a postcard. Edges worn, colors faded almost gray. I'd kept it folded in a tin, tucked behind drywall in my garage for 40 years. I held it for a moment. Ran my thumb over the trident. Then I tucked it under a flat rock at the edge of the water. No ceremony, no speech. Just buried again, where it belonged. Because Jack didn't need to carry the whole weight. He just needed to understand why it mattered. As I turned to leave, the wind shifted, just enough to push a familiar smell inland, sea spray, oil, and rust. Smelled like history. Smelled like the past finally letting go. The quietest men in the room are often the ones with the loudest histories. But sometimes, silence is not hiding. It's honoring. And in the end, legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what walks forward because of you. Ellipsis. If this story made you feel something about family, about respect, about the quiet kind of heroism we too often overlook, then don't just scroll past. Hit subscribe. Because these stories, the ones that matter, they're still out there. And I'm here to tell them, one truth at a time. Let's make sure they're never forgotten.